There we go. That's why. All right. Have to make sure that that's on and live. All right, let's rock and roll, folks.
And here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the right of human beings to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Yes, you have. Good morning. It's 7:30 in the morning here in Boston, and wherever you are, I want to thank you for joining us for the Benjamin Dixon Show. It is Hump Day Wednesday, and if you made it this far, well, you might as well keep pressing and make it a little further. I want to thank you for joining us at the Benjamin Dixon Show, whether you're watching live on YouTube, whether you're listening on Spreaker, or even if you're getting the download. Actually, most of our listeners listen after the fact, because I guess 7:30 in the morning, I thought 7:30 in the morning was a pretty decent time. And it's, you know, for people who get up and go to that 8 o'clock shift, it's pretty convenient. But a lot of our listeners listen after the fact. And so whenever and wherever you're listening, I want to thank you for joining us this morning. So it's what happens is there is a conversation that happens across the United States. And right now, the conversation that is happening across the United States that cannot be ignored, even in the backdrop of all the election stuff that is happening, all the people who are announcing that they're running for president and all this. And we'll discuss that. We'll definitely get into national politics. But right now, the national conversation is Baltimore. And not just Baltimore, but Black Lives Matter. Not just Black Lives Matter, but the entire movement of people, particularly African Americans, who are saying that enough is enough. The police violence, the police brutality is enough. And I hear a lot of people who want to make it seem as though the numbers, it's not epidemic. You know, it's not an epidemic number of people who are being killed by the police. I hear that quite often. But, you know, when it's your family, when it's your son, when it's your daughter, when it's your uncle, your cousin, one is too many. And I'm saying it in this calming voice, because normally I'm a little more worked up about this, but I have to help you to understand that there's a change that is happening. And it can't be credited to one place in particular. I think it's a change in our collective consciousness. There's a shift that's taking place, that we are demanding that there is a shift in the police culture. That's what we're demanding. That's what's happening. We're not taking it anymore. And people are rightfully so doing it their way, the best way that they think and the best way that they know how. And so the national conversation has been and probably will continue to be police violence, which is disproportionately felt in Black communities. That's where we are. And because that's where we are, that's what we have to focus on and do our part to make this come to reality. Because if we can change this situation, I want people to understand something. You know, you focus on the fact that we say Black Lives Matter. But do you realize if we make the change that we're going to make, and it affects the Black community, who are disproportionately represented in the police and the justice system, who are disproportionately represented in police brutality cases, if that change takes place in the Black community, you do realize that it's going to help all other communities. And so by the very fact that we're focusing on Black lives means that the effects will be felt through all lives. So there's no need for us to change Black Lives Matter to All Lives Matter, because whatever happens to the Black community is going to, the positive ramifications are going to be felt throughout all communities. All right. So that's where we are. And that's what, it's the summer of our discontent. Normally we have a winter of our, but it's the summer of our discontent. And we're in the spring. We are not going to sit down and take this anymore. And so this morning I have a guest with me. I have another guest with me by the name of Damon Tyler. And Damon Tyler, I came across him through a friend of mine who shared some of the things that he was speaking about in his lecture that he just gave this past Sunday, and where he connected the Willie Lynch letters. And if you're not familiar with the Willie Lynch letters, you will be by the end of this conversation. He connected the Willie Lynch letters and cast it in terms of the effects, the long-lasting effects of the implications of what happened during slavery, how long it was to last with us, and the fact that there's a social and a collective conscious awakening where Black people across the country are simply shaking off the bonds, the lasting mental chains of slavery. And you know what? Instead of me just talking about it, let me introduce my guest. Damon, how are you this morning?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you so much for joining us. I know it's early over in Houston. If it's early here on the East Coast, definitely it's early in Houston. So we really appreciate you joining us this morning.
Well, I'm in Dallas and it's 6:35 a.m.
Yes, Dallas. You know what? I have family in Houston, so that's what always throws me off. Anytime somebody talks about Texas, I automatically think of Houston. But you're in Dallas and it's 6:35, and I want to thank you for joining us. Listen, could you introduce yourself to our audience? Tell them a little bit about your background, and then we're going to shift hard gears and start talking about the Baltimore uprising and your lecture with regard to the Willie Lynch letters.
Absolutely. My name is Damon Jamel Tyler, and I'm an educator here in Dallas, but I'm also a community advocate. I'm involved in a lot of community planning and strategic planning as far as building schools, better schools, building outreach programs. So I do a lot of work in
Damon, I'm losing you. We're going in and out on our conversation, and I know we're having this conversation via Skype, so it could be that we just need you to I don't know if you're hardlined in, or maybe you can get closer to your router. But you're saying some things key about your background that I think the audience really needs to hear. So could you back up and tell us more about your and we'll give it a go. And if the signal isn't strong enough, we can definitely make some changes and get you back real solidly. But just tell us a little bit more about your background as an educator, because that's where we started to lose you.
Well, I pretty much teach children. I work a lot with youth. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay. So I generally, I work for Dallas ISD, and I teach fourth graders, but at the same time, I work with youth of a teenage 13 to 18 range. I do group counseling with them, where we talk about a lot of the issues that they are dealing with. We talk about, we have high teen pregnancy rates here. We have high STD rates here. Everybody knows about the school to prison pipeline. It is up and running and on full throttle here in Dallas. So spending time with the youth is pretty much my mission and my charge. I believe, in the quote of Dr. Cornel West, and that the children are 100% of our future, not 90%, not
right.
50%. They will completely take over whatever is left behind. And so I put
Absolutely.
a lot of work into creating a better future.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you mentioned, or unfortunately it's not funny, but it's irony that you mentioned the prison to pipeline, from the school to prison pipeline, and particularly there in Texas. My wife this morning, I saw the video yesterday, but she sent me in a message this morning this clip from Bill Clayton Detention Center of Littlefield, Texas. And I don't know if you've seen it or heard it, but I'm going to play it for my audience, and you should be able to hear it. Let me know if you do not hear it, but I want you to listen in, because it gives you an idea of where we are in our prison system across the United States, with private for-profit businesses, prisons that are there strictly to make money off of the labor of people who have been imprisoned. It's almost like it actually not even like a brand new, it is a brand new form of slavery and slave labor. So let me play this clip. It's only 48 seconds and then we'll discuss it.
The detention center that I'm going to sell today really is state of the art. It's as good as it can possibly get. You have the people coming into that pipeline, so you have an endless supply of product. No matter what your business is, what you're looking for, we will have a steady supply of people in America to fill this facility. $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. I have $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. $5 million, you want to bet $5 million, fine. Yes, sir, thank you. Now call me a number. Now give me $5 million, 200.
So what you just got through listening to was an auction. It was an auction they were auctioning off a private prison and they were auctioning off the labor of prisoners. And it's a preview for a documentary by by BraveNet News. And it just shows you it is absolutely modern day slavery and the incentives that these companies have to keep people in prison. So when you mentioned the school to prison pipeline, it just made me, I had to play that clip there because and I'll put the clip up on my site. I want everyone to go watch this documentary so you can understand the level to which the level of misguided interest is the nicest way I can say it without being inflammatory, but their interest is not in rehabilitation. A lot of time their interest is not in just corrections, but it is in making a profit off of the people. So the work that you're doing in Houston, I think is very valuable because anyone who can help keep anybody out of that private prison pipeline, I think is a great help to our community. So a hard shift here. Tell me about the lecture that you just gave because it got the attention of a lot of people. Definitely got my attention. I was trying to get the video of it so that we could play some clips. But tell me about the overall thesis of your lecture and how it's applicable to the Baltimore uprising.
Well, for me, I'm a historian, so history is very important to me. For me, it gives me a context in which to look at our present day reality and see how did we get here. And, when I came across the Willie Lynch letters, it was years ago, but I revisited it a few years ago, and as I was reading through it, it dawned on me: people need to know this, especially our young people. They need to know the mental process and the creation of a slave. They need to know all of the ramifications of those mental slave chains, that even though we are physically not on plantations and living in that environment, the mental chain still remains. And so I wanted to make the comparison. I wanted them to see where it all began. But before I actually get into the Willie Lynch and even slavery itself, I try to give a cultural understanding of who we were before we were slaves.
Okay.
I do that in my lecture to let people understand the value systems, the religious or spiritual systems, the just the overall cultural, everything from language to dress to relationships with one another. We had systems that worked for us since the beginning of existence, as far as human beings are concerned. And all of that was stripped away, and we were given, a lot of what we have now, and it has not served us.
Right. And that's so important. And the reason I not just jumping off of what you said, but I've been in so many conversations where people, white Americans in particular, don't understand the fact that there was our culture, our heritage, our spirituality, our systems, our entire nations of people that existed before America existed. And even in context of America, a lot of people don't realize that even in the midst of slavery in America, in the midst of Jim Crow in America, we created our own communities, our own environments. We created our own ecosystems, our own economic systems, and our own education systems. And we were thriving. We were thriving quite well. And it was because of the systemic and the targeted attacks against our communities that were outright massacres and covert operations through the flooding of our communities with drugs, that they were able to wipe out so much of the progress that we built in spite of slavery and in spite of. And so when I have, in spite of Jim Crow and lynchings, so when I have these conversations with people, it's amazing to me that they honestly believe, so many honestly believe that the Black intellectualism only started in the 60s, like after the passage of the Voting Rights Act, when we not only have great culture here in the context of the United States of America, but our cultures existed long before America existed.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can find evidence of not only just our impact culturally in Africa, but you even in the Americas before there was a United States, we've always been everywhere. So it's this notion that and that was a part of the propaganda as well. You know, you had to portray it as if we were some uncivilized savages, and slavery was the best thing that had ever happened to us because we had a chance to be civilized at the hands of the European. And so understanding this context, I think, can be a powerful hook into bringing young people and not just young people, but all people into a conversation about where we are right now.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to take a quick break here and go to our first commercial break. When we come back, Damon, I want you to start unpacking some of those cultural things, but then I want you to start talking about some of the thesis of your lecture, because I thought it was riveting. I thought it really grabbed my attention. And I think that it's so applicable when you see the mindset of the Black people who are protesting right now, who are out there making a difference. It's like there is an awakening, and we cannot ignore this awakening. And if the awakening is nothing else but the fact that we're saying that we're not just going to sit down and take this anymore. All right, folks, so we're going to take a quick break. After this commercial break, we'll be back with more with Damon Tyler and the Willie Lynch letters and how it is applicable to what's happening in Baltimore. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show, and we'll be back after this break.
Hey, if you're like me, you're probably hearing the news that the economy is getting better, right? But there's one problem. You still don't have a job. Get back into the game with Chance.com, the state-of-the-art online employment connection for the new generation. Get access to millions of jobs on Chance that are actually hiring now. Stop searching for outdated job postings. Log on to Chance.com. Create a profile, and then be found. Make the connection you need to get hired today. If you're serious about your career, you've got to check this out. Chance.com. Get that job. Make that chance with Chance.com. JANZZ.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov, brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You feel petrified. You're struggling with your mortgage payments, not knowing what to do. You do nothing. But if you do something, you're far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Call 888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plotto and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey, the dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Buckle up for the ride. Give us a call, 857-600-0518.
Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joined by Damon Tyler, and we're discussing the Baltimore uprising, and someone even created a new hashtag to represent what's going on, and they're calling it the Black Spring, and alluding to the Arab Spring, the Green Revolution, and all the different actions that took place across the international community. And I think that's apropos because one thing I've noticed, and I don't care what your argument is about what's happening across the country. One thing is for certain, that when this has been completed, the landscape of our nation with regard to African Americans, women and men being abused by police, that environment, that climate, that's going to change. And we see the change happening already. And I tweeted out the other day, and I wasn't being facetious or joking or brown nosing or whatever you want to call it, but the creators of the Black Lives Matter hashtag, when this is all said and done, I think that the change that we will see across the nation will be so magnanimous is the only word that comes to mind, that they would be worthy of the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I know everybody is going to be like, that's a little much, but I want you to honestly think about what that simple hashtag has done and what it's doing to the mindsets of people. It's forcing us to have these remaining conversations that we've been avoiding since 1964, 1965, and 1968. We've kind of pushed it underneath the rug. So I just, the fact that we're labeling it the Black Spring, and it really is indicative of where we are and the conversations that we're having, and the conversation that I'm having now with Damon Tyler with regard to the social conscious awakening, the awakening that is, and it's not as though we weren't already awake. It's that saying, stay woke, stay woke. We were awake, but now it's like we are being proactive instead of reactive in many ways. So Damon, I want to thank you for being with us this morning again. So start unpacking some of your thesis and some of your lecture that you gave about the Willie Lynch letters. First of all, tell the people who Willie Lynch was and about the Willie Lynch letters, and then we'll tangent over to your lecture.
Okay, thank you for having me. Willie Lynch, in essence, was a Caribbean slave plantation owner. And there's a lot of argument, past and present, on if he was actually a real person and if the Willie Lynch letters was a real document. I really don't, get into that argument, engage it at all, because it to me, it's irrelevant. The evidence is very present in today's world. We can look at it and we can see, especially if we talk about our parents' generation. In essence, Willie Lynch was a salesman who sold basically the making of a slave. Right. So he sold specific procedures and principles to the mainland plantation owners to kind of help them deal with their slave problems, so to speak. At that time, they were having many uprisings. There were loss of land, loss of crops, loss of stock, as far as your livestock is concerned. And so Willie Lynch showed up in 1712 on the banks of the river in Virginia, and actually on the James River in Virginia, and actually gave this presentation to a group of plantation owners. But in essence, my thesis is based around the idea that we are in an age of hope. Willie Lynch decided that he would create separation amongst us, and so in a way to control us, he would use fear, distrust, and envy, and separation to basically create a slave. So he separated us by age, meaning he would put the older black male against the younger black male. He separated us by skin complexion. So the dark skinned slave and the light skinned slave, they were against each other. One very powerful separation was the separation between the male and the female. So you're talking about mothers and fathers now who are distrustful, fearful, and envious of each other. And so there was hair, there was, I mean, anything that you can use to divide a people up into smaller segments to create some kind of ranking or pecking order. If you know anything about the art of war, that divide and conquer has always been the most famous tool. And so what I do is I go through the whole process of the making of a slave, and I talk a lot about the examples in the current day situation where you can see people who have problems with each other because of skin complexion. Skin people being more favored. Of course, if you go back to the plantation, those were the ones who were allowed to live in the master's house. So they would be the house slaves. And then you would have the ones who worked down in the field, which were the darker slaves. And so it just, all of this separation, these divisions, over generation after generation, we have grown up in that context.
Right.
And so, but my message is truly of hope. As I engage and interact with the youth, I realize that less and less are these things important to them. They're not as light-skinned, dark-skinned conscious as we were, or our parents were. A lot of the divisions that we suffered from for so long, the kids are growing up in a different context. And so I tell people that Willie Lynch showed up in 1712. And if you do the math, this is 2015, that is a little more than 300 years ago. And in his actual presentation, he guarantees that it will work. It will control the minds of our people for at least 300 years. And so I preach this message of hope that, you know, the Willie Lynch curse is wearing off. And we're kind of waking up out of its effects, and we're looking around. But what we need is a new conditioning. We need a new narrative. We need a new way of thinking of who we are, because for all of this time, it's been created, designed, and basically controlled by our past slave masters.
You know, I like what you're saying, because I've read in many occasions the questioning of the Willie Lynch letters, whether or not they're actually real or not. And actually, I'm gonna be honest with you, the very first time I read it, it was so accurate, it was so precise that my alarms went off, and I said, this can't be real, because it is too precise in explaining our current condition as African Americans. And I read it about 10 years ago was the first time that I read it. And I'm like, nah, this can't be real. But I like the way you position yourself, that even let's say for instance that this is allegory. Let's say that it was just a narrative made up to explain what's happening to us. The evidence is still so true the evidence and the effects of slavery can be felt even right now today, where there is an issue. There's still lingering issues of colorism. Are you a light-skinned Black person? Are you a dark-skinned Black person? Or even the hatred, the self-hatred that goes along with so many different aspects of our lives. And so, you know, the implications and the message that was communicated through the Willie Lynch letters really precisely identifies the struggle that African Americans have had throughout American history. The best example of this would be I believe it was either Essence or Jet back in the 60s, where they put out a cover asking the question, if this was a title, this was the front page was, are colored women getting more pretty or more beautiful? And on it was all of the light-skinned, you know, women with all their processed hair, not a single image of our natural beauty. And so to me, it was like we were suffering from a malady of self-hatred. And if you trace it back to its roots, it absolutely comes from the destruction of our culture, our identity, of our self-worth that took place, that was necessary for the slave masters to see us as animals so that they can make money off of us, which in context of everything that's happening, and we look at the private prison system, the prison industrial complex, we see the same type of thing happening again. It's just legitimized through quote unquote the rehabilitation system, you know. So we see history repeating itself, and so not for me, so that I don't take this off on too many different tangents, which I would definitely do. Help me to understand something that you were saying, which I think is really key. It's been about 300 years since that letter was written, 303 years, and now we see this social awakening, this consciousness, this awakening. And not that, and I don't want to discredit all the work that was done before, because there was so much work that was done that led to this moment. But just tell me more about that awakening that you feel is happening at the end of this period that Willie Lynch said it would last for almost 300 years.
Well, I think when you see, you know, a lot of the movements, there's a natural hair movement. So sisters are, you know, encouraging one another to go natural. I think with when I interact with the youth, and they really aren't caring about who's of what race and who's of another. Like it's just it's like we're waking up out of a sleep. And so what I do is I wrap myself around the youth, because they're more malleable, right? They're up and they're looking for us to come and define them. And so, like, I belong to an organization called ASLA, and ASLA was started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson in 1915. And so here we are at our 100th year, and it's basically the Association for the Study of African Life and History. And what we do is I sit in a room with a bunch of older professors, right? They're in their 60s and 70s. And when I'm in there, I'm saying, wow, you know, what a wealth of knowledge, right? But they don't necessarily connect with the youth. So all of that knowledge is just being, you know, basically harnessed in that room. And so I said, well, what if we can get maybe some people in the mid age, 35, 45 in here? What if we can get some millennials in here, and or some teenagers in here? What about that transference of generational knowledge that we can, you know, get going to kill this notion of ageism? Because that was another separation that Willie Lynch, you know, imposed. It was where, you know, in Africa, we always sought, you know, the counsel of our elders. It was just the way that we worked. So if I didn't understand something, I would go speak to my elders and get that guidance. They have more wisdom and knowledge. Well, we don't we for so long did not have that. And so, and we still don't, to a certain degree, especially here in Dallas. But one of my missions is let's see if we can get all of us in a room and have a real discussion, because you're right, their history matters. The struggles of the 60s, it matters. It's important. It's powerful. They sacrifice, but our children don't necessarily identify with that. You see what I'm saying? So we have to find a way to bridge those generational gaps, because that's how you transfer the culture. That's how you transfer the knowledge and understanding. That's how we can go back to our roots. in Africa, because a lot of stuff still stays alive, but we don't really transfer that knowledge like we should. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a connection with the youth. I'm trying to reconnect them to who we were before Willie Lynch imposed himself on our mentality.
Absolutely. That's I appreciate the work that you're doing. I think it's very important in terms of connecting the generations, the generational gap, because there's animosity that can easily take place naturally without the interference of outside influences. But then when you add on outside influences, it can absolutely divide us, and that wisdom and insight that we would get from our elders could easily be lost. And not only because young people may not want to listen to the elders of the community, but also sometimes elders in the community have antipathy towards people who are legitimately there to replace them. I mean, that it is what it is. The elders can't be here forever, and I think that is so apropos in terms of the broader conversation, the awakening that's happening, the Black Spring, the national dialogue that's going on about race matters, because here's the thing, if we can finish this conversation, and when I say finish, I don't mean bring it to a conclusion, but I mean bring it to a point where we can have even a semicolon and not a period, because the conversation needs to continue. But if we can complete a meaningful national dialogue on these issues, I think the ramifications will be felt in every single community. I look at the Black community often as the standard bearer, or we carry civil rights on our back, and because of what we carry on our backs and our shoulders, so many other people are actually benefit from the work that we do. So if we can finish this part of the conversation, the results will be felt in every single community, across every identity, across every race, every religion, because the questions, the conversations that are necessary to complete this dialogue reach so deep inside of the American psyche that we have to confront the unspoken racism. We have to confront the unspoken bigotry. We have to confront the institutionalized systems of oppression that have been ignored. The same reason that women are still only making 70 cents on the dollar to men. Some of those same reasons are because we haven't finished the conversation about Black matters. There's a lot of things that are underneath this blanket of race issues that once we pull back the cover, it's really going to benefit every single community. All right, folks, we're going to take another break. After we get back off this break, we're going to come back and we're going to conclude this conversation with Damon Tyler from Dallas, and we're going to shift into a couple of other things. This is Wednesday morning on the Benjamin Dixon Show, and I want to thank you for being a part of what we're doing here. Stay tuned in, folks. We'll be back right after this break.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com. or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still joined here by Damon Tyler, educator, community activist. Just gave a brilliant lecture on this past weekend with regard to the Black Lives Matter movement, the Baltimore uprising, and in context of the Willie Lynch letters. And so, Damon, what I'd like for you to do here is just tell us how our guests our listeners can get in touch with you, how they can find out more about you. You have a website or anything to connect them with you, because I think it's important that they hear more from you and about you.
Well, yeah, I can be reached at wearefamily.com. That's my website. It's for me, I'm just getting into my work. I had a pledge of 15 years of my life to teaching children. And so for me, it was very important that I give as many children as I can an opportunity to have an African-American male teacher in front of them. Mm-hmm. On a daily basis that will love, support, and teach them. And so I've made my impact. I've done, 15 years of service to children. And right. So, now I'm making this transition into more public, more broader kind of attempt to serve on a greater scale.
Absolutely. And that was wearefamily.com.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Damon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I want everyone to, a request, get that lecture up, man. If you can get that up on YouTube and share it through your site, because I want people, as I was listening to you, what you were saying and the things that you have to say, I think it's great to see what's happening now in context of what has happened in the past. Like you said, you're a historian by trade. That's what you do. So if you could, that's just a request from me, because I want to watch the entire lecture and I want to share with my listeners. But wearefamily.com. And I want to thank Damon Jamil Tyler for being with us this morning. And listen, man, we definitely want to get you back anytime that you're available.
I appreciate it, brother.
I'm sorry, you got cut off there. You were saying something at the end.
Oh, I was saying thank you, brother, for having me, and I'm available whenever you need me, brother.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, Damon Tyler, Damon. But thank you so much for joining us. That name sounds like it sounds like a rock star name. Whose name is Damon Tyler? Well, maybe it's his name. It's just what we know about him. All right, folks. So a couple of things. I think that it's important for us to expose you to as many different things as possible. As a matter of fact, on Friday, I have an interview with the Boston Museum of Fine Arts curator with regard to Gordon Parks and his photography. Many of you know who Gordon Parks is. If you don't, tune in on Friday. But I want you to see the different aspects of the conversation, because it's not just about the physical protests that take place. It's about all of the different pieces being put into the respective places. Everyone is playing a role. Everyone cannot protest. Everyone can't be at the physical protest as much as people would want to be there. Because we're fighting in a place where a lot of people just don't even think that we should be protesting at all. And so while people are out on the front lines protesting, the rest of us, yes, thank you. I'm thinking Steven Tyler. Someone just sent me a message telling me where I'm like Damon Tyler, Steven Tyler, but no, two entirely different people, obviously. And we want to thank Damon for his contribution and what he's doing, because as I was saying, it's the roles that we play. Everyone has to play their role and do their part. When I had the conversation with DeRay McKesson some months back, long before Baltimore kicked off, he was saying that everyone has a role to play. And I was asking him, what is it that he needs the most in terms of the movement? And he said what is needed the most is the fact that everyone should just find what it is that they do and do that, because everyone's contribution is significant, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no matter how big of a platform, no matter how small your platform. It doesn't matter. Your part plays a significant role, because we're trying to convince the minds and hearts of people who I can't reach them all. DeRay can't reach them all. Damon can't reach them all. April can't reach, all the different people, the guests that I have on here, we cannot reach them all, but you can. And sometimes it's a simple conversation that you would have on Facebook that would change the minds of people, because ultimately that's where we are. We're in a period where it's not the paper that we need, it's the hearts that we need. It's not laws. We don't need new laws. That's what the 60s were about. I mean, there might be some exceptions, some things that need to change here and there. The 60s were about us getting our rights. Now we have our rights. Today's conversation is about changing the narrative and changing the broader, the hearts and minds of the people. And that does not happen from the top down. It doesn't happen from a great leader being in the front. We don't have a great leader in the front of this conversation. It comes from the bottom up. So long story short, it means every single one of us has a role to play, no matter who we are, no matter where we're from, no matter our background. We have a significant role to play, and we need you to play that role, and we need you to execute it and to do it to the best of your ability. With that being said, I think it's very, very important for people to understand something that I've said twice in the show today, and I want to reiterate it because it is important. A lot of times in context of progressivism, in context of liberal ideas, sometimes people dismiss the Black narrative, and they dismiss it as us playing the race card. Now, I'm not talking about what's coming from the right. I'm talking about what comes from people on the left. And African Americans are predominantly, overwhelmingly, like 90% progressive. We may not put the label progressive on us, but when you break down our different issues and our different politics, we are progressive. And for so long, Black issues have been pushed to the back of the bus, no pun intended, but actually it was a pun intended, but they've been pushed to the side because of fear of having those broader conversations. And here's what I'm trying to get at. Because of the fear of having these conversations, we have avoided some very key things economically. And let me make that more precise. Because we have been avoiding having the necessary race conversations, we have also been avoiding the necessary economic conversations. Because one thing I want you to understand very clearly is that the race component, racism in America, is really an economic system. It really is about money. It is about green. At the end of the day, underneath all of white supremacy, underneath all of the racism, underneath Jim Crow, underneath slavery, it was all about money, period. Now, how we feel that in the African American community is racism. How women feel that is sexism. And how Muslims feel it is in xenophobia and Islamophobia. So it's the same hatred, but experienced in different ways. But underneath that hatred is money. Because, and let me just make it explicitly plain to you, you have to understand that the people who are in power, who want to maintain the status quo, this is not always Republicans, it's not always conservatives, sometimes it's Democrats. We saw this with Bill Clinton, and we're seeing traces of this even with Barack Obama. The people who are in power and who are in control don't care 1 cent about what your skin color is, so long as you don't mess with their financial institutions and their financial structure. You don't mess with their money. And the best way to keep all of us scrambling and all of us divided so that they can forward their financial narratives is simply by pitting us against each other. Pitting the poor white man against the poor black man, the middle class white man against the middle class black man, and all the middle class against the lower class. And, you know, there's all these different ways that they have divided us. So just to be clear, if we ever are able to finish and to carry on this conversation about Black lives mattering, an essential component of that conversation is the economic systems that exacerbate poverty in the Black community. And if we ever have those conversations about why it is that poverty is so exacerbated in the Black community, poverty in white communities will be addressed. And so we've done ourselves a disservice as progressives by not having these necessary conversations about race, because if you have the conversations about race, you cannot do it without having a conversation about economics. Bottom line. So it is extremely important that we become comfortable as progressives. And you know, I guess here's the other thing. We cannot expect this conversation to be had and led by people who are not experiencing it firsthand. In other words, this conversation must be carried out by Black people. There's something on Friday when we discussed Gordon Parks. One of the key things about his story was that he was given the autonomy and the agency to tell the narrative through his own lens. And there's something so powerful about you being able to tell your own story through your own voice, through your own eyes, versus having someone else tell the story for you. And so what am I saying? It is absolutely necessary that we have the conversations, and the conversations be headed up by people of color. Because when we have conversations about women's issues, we don't need men to have that conversation. We need men to listen, right? Same thing about race issues, same thing about LGBTQ issues, same thing about every other issue that's still outstanding that we have to address. So I want you to understand that it is important, it is vitally important that we not only listen, but the people that we listen to are the people who have had those experiences. And once we have these conversations, once we start these conversations in earnest and we carry them through fruition, we must have conversations about the economic systems and the way that we engage in capitalism in the United States and the exploitive nature of it, and how it is that our entire system is built off of taking the last dollar from its citizens. I can't express this point enough. When we study economics, we really study the last dollar. We study what is that person going to do with their last dollar. And when you are in impoverished communities, that last dollar is really about the difference between being able to eat or get the medicine that you need. So we can't have this conversation about race without having the conversation about economics. And that's why I support the Black Lives Matter movement, not just because the color of my skin, not just because it is so important to the fact that when I get pulled over by police that I have the same fears. It's also because if we could ever successfully have this conversation without interference from people who are saying, oh, you're just playing the race card. And we get that from the left and from the right. We get that from Democrats as well as Republicans. We get that from Black people even. If we could ever have this meaningful conversation and discuss all of the various nuances that are at play in this very complex conversation, then we will start addressing the issues that are pertinent. It's out of necessity. We cannot have this conversation without discussing things that are going to be beneficial to every single community. And let me see if I can wrap this up with this. It reminds me of this. We have come over a way that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. I believe that's the last verse of the Black National Anthem. And I put it in context of that because to me, on the backs of African Americans has been carried the entire civil rights movement. And those civil rights are now extending to every marginalized group. And because of that, we essentially, as African Americans, have had to carry so many groups that are benefiting from our struggle. And so it only makes sense to me, and you could disagree with me, and that's, I don't care, but it only makes sense to me that this next wave of progress also comes on the backs of African Americans because we led the way before. Yes, there were women's suffrage movements, and we're not discounting that at all. But a great deal, the majority of the civil rights, the entire conversation about civil and human rights in America has come in context of the African American experience. And so when we say we have treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, we're not just treading that path just for us. We're treading that path for every single marginalized and disenfranchised group. Everyone from people who have the same skin color as us down to people who don't have the same skin color as us, people who are imprisoned and disenfranchised, people who are basically slaves in the prison system, people who are marginalized because of their beliefs, because of their lack of belief, people who are marginalized in the community because they can't even tell people that they're atheists because they're afraid of what happens to them in their local community in Mississippi. All of these people who are marginalized can benefit once again from the struggle that Black people are going through. And so we stand in solidarity with all things positive. If you're trying to make a positive change in the United States of America, you should join and not be grudging to Black Lives Matter, because Black Lives Matter is definitely going to matter for you. That's all I have, folks. We'll catch you next time. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
And until that moment comes when we, the Americans, are able to accept the fact that on that continent we are trying to forge a new identity for which we need each other, that I am not a ward of America. I am one of the people who built the country. Until this moment.
That we are brothers. It's not a question of Jews or Christians or Muslims. We're all in the same boat.
Which we need each other.
Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
Love.
Until this moment.
I come to you today to say that we can build a newer and better nation. I say we can do so, that we must do so, and that we will do so.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at www.thebenjamindixonshow.com.